Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Mike, host of the free iTunes podcast, Psychiatric Secrets Revealed with Dr. Mike, but that's not why I'm here today. This is another Saving Savvy episode, and in this episode, I'm going to prove to you that I'm a professional photographer. You know, I watch these YouTube channels with these influencers, and they tell me what it takes to be a professional photographer, and I followed their advice very carefully, although sometimes it can be a little confusing. But I'm going to prove to you today that I am by following their advice and showing you what I've done. So, of course, to be a professional photographer, you have to have a full frame sensor camera. Otherwise, you're just kind of trash, I guess. Now, I know a lot of people do use micro four thirds cameras and they consider themselves professionals, and they use APS-C type cameras and they consider themselves professionals. But we know, because the influencers tell us, that only people that use full frame cameras are professional. And so I went out and I bought this nice, very high resolution 800 series Nikon full frame camera. And I thought I was all set. Full frame camera, super high resolution. The images really popped. They kind of popped in the wrong way, though, because if you saw someone with a blemish, you were afraid that zit would pop because the resolution was so high. But that's another whole topic altogether. But then an influencer told me that the lenses, especially the 70 to 200 lens that I was using for portraits, it was breathing or something. It was breathing, and breathing is bad. Cameras should not breathe. So they suggested that I get a Canon camera because the Canon lenses don't breathe. And so I have this nice 5D series camera. It's really, well, it's been on. The camera was on. I didn't even know that. This very nice 5D camera. And I use it all the time. And really, I think the 5D series camera probably is the most used camera by all professionals, whether they're photojournalists or wedding photographers. You see them everywhere. But there was something terribly wrong with this. Another influencer told me, they said that these cameras were no good because they have this prism and this mirror thing in them. And I guess that mirror made the pictures not as good. But then someone else said that these cameras had great color science. But then I was told that I should only shoot in RAW, and color science only applies to JPEGs. Well, anyways, it was so confusing. I decided that I had to listen to another influencer. And that influencer told me that mirror cameras with the little flippy mirror things are just bad. Bad, bad, bad. And you had to get a camera without a mirror. A mirrorless full frame camera like this Canon or this Sony Alpha series. It's kind of tiny in my hands and it got all these confusing buttons. But I know now that I'm really a professional photographer because I have this full frame mirrorless camera, and that's going to make me professional. In fact, you know, I went out and I have other full frame cameras too. Like I have this really nice, oh gosh, this is a 6000 series Sony camera. Pardon me. Sorry. But this one, oh my gosh. Someone put in an M series Canon camera in my pile. Julie! Okay, some doctor humor. I know. Pretty silly. But it does lead to another doctor story. And this is the story of the drug reps and a new medicine that was introduced, probably about 15 or more years ago. So this new medicine was an antidepressant, and it was touted to be great because it used a different mechanism of action than the current meds that we had on the market. So it may work with people where the other meds didn't. It also had a very low rate of sexual dysfunction, did not cause sexual problems, which some of the other medicines did. That sounded great too. And those were the things that were promoted by these drug reps, basically salesmen for the pharmaceutical company. Well, I remember putting one person on one of these meds, and because of other effects, she literally slept for 36 hours straight. She was not a happy camper. Yes, it may have less sexual dysfunction, but it also caused tremendous weight gain in a lot of people. So I didn't hear about that I heard about the positives. And that's often what we hear about things when they're trying to promote, when someone's trying to sell something to you, you hear about the positives, not necessarily about the negatives. So today I want to present a more balanced view of APS-C sensors. Now, obviously, I have full frame cameras and I use full frame cameras. So I think they're great, but they're not the end all and they have their limitations. So let's look at some of the positives of full frame cameras. I'll tell you why I really use them at the end of this discussion. And then we'll look at some of the positives of APS-C cameras too. So people talk about these cameras as having some unique characteristics. Since the sensor size is so big, they tend to have better performance when it comes to low light conditions. In other words, when you crank up the ISO, they work better. Well, that's absolutely the case. But in my experience, it's about a one-stop difference. So I can use most APS-C cameras up to about 6,400. I'm kind of satisfied at that level. When it comes to a full-frame camera, I'm more comfortable around 12,800. That's one-stop difference. That's a big deal, but there are certainly other ways around dealing with low-light situations, including faster lenses and many other things, noise reduction software, whatever you want to do. But you have to give the full frame camera its due. The other thing that you hear about full frame cameras is they have greater dynamic range. In other words, the steps between the highest, brightest and the lowest, darkest, there's more gradations in there. It's a broader swatch of the light spectrum, and that's true. But really, when you look at the difference between the two cameras, the APS-C and the full frame camera have gotten smaller and smaller and smaller. And in some cases, people will say that APS-C size sensor may have slightly better dynamic range than its full frame sibling, believe it or not. The other thing that you hear about APS-C size sensors is that they have greater ability to blur the background. You can get a shallower depth of field. Now, let's be really clear here, and so don't put this in the column down there because you will be wrong. A sensor does not cause a shallow depth of field. It's just a piece of silicon. What does happen, though, is a sensor has a bigger field of view, and so to get the same composition, I have to use a larger focal length. And if I use a longer focal length, that is going to affect the depth of field and give me more of a blurred background, more of a bokeh or however you want to say it. But that's not to say that you can't get a blurred background with an APS-C size sensor. You absolutely can. Maybe a little bit more with this, but you can absolutely get that kind of professional look. And, frankly, people are talking less and less about bokeh because you could do it on your iPhone now. And so it's less cool and it's less of a talking point for you to buy these kinds of cameras. So they switched to something else. What is that something else? Resolution. So this camera I think has 37 megapixels, which is insane. There's cameras now that have 60 megapixels, right? And you can do whatever you want, 50 megapixels, 60 megapixels, and this is somehow good. I mean, it's good to choke your computer. It's good to fill up your hard drive. Do you really want to take that photograph where that model with all of her carefully covered pimples are showing through? I actually, there's tutorials on YouTube to tell you how to make a picture more blurry when it comes to portraiture. Now, there may be some instances where you want higher resolution, but even the claimed reason, which is now for landscape photography, I personally think is bullshit, right? I was trying to say, well, how much do you need for landscape photography? And I found a person on the internet. I was searching a professional landscape photographer who sells his photography even to calendars. So these are, calendars, I think, is kind of the ultimate landscape photography thing because these are the most choice, most beautiful pictures you can get. He said he thinks, if possible, it's good to have 16 megapixels for landscape photography. And then he showed this giant calendar. It was like really this big by this big. And he said that the picture on the front of it, which was his photograph, was absolutely gorgeous, right? And he said, this was only 12 megapixels, but the company was able to extrapolate or interpolate or do whatever and to make the picture look just great. 12 megapixels. So you don't really need you don't need those 50 or 60 megapixel things for most cases. Maybe you got your own special case. So yes, so all those things though are talking points for these kinds of cameras. But what about the talking points for these kinds of cameras? Well, yes, you can get a full frame camera now, pretty basic one, for around $1,000. But you can get a pretty decent APS-C camera for much, much less than that. And in fact, you can probably get an APS-C camera with a standard zoom lens on it, a telephoto like a 7200 zoom lens on it for probably around $1,000, a little bit less or a little bit more. Throw in a nifty 50 and you've got a whole complete kit. In fact, for about $300 more, I think maybe $350, I know Canon on their products, they sell a super wide for the camera and also a nifty 50 for like $350. So let's say you spent $1,300, you'd have a complete kit. Now, you say, well, but those lenses are not as good as a professional lens. Well, right. Professional lenses have just gone through the roof. I remember in the day spending $800 or $1,000 on a lens just seemed out of sight, but we did it. Now you look at lenses and they're $2,000, $2,500, $2,800, $3,200 for a lens. Now they might have the most great super coating, nano coating on them, and they might be made out of gold or whatever, super well constructed. And I'm sure they have much better optical qualities. But for most of us, even if you're doing professional work, process it in your photo processing program. Add a little more contrast, make the saturation a little bit deeper, and most photo type raw editing type programs will automatically get rid of things like vignetting or artifacts of different sorts, fringing and that sort of stuff. Just automatically, the lens distortion automatically. Is it as good as a $2,000 or a $3,000 lens? Well, probably not. But you're not going to notice it unless you pixel peek, and your customer is certainly not going to notice it. So the cost difference is tremendous with these cameras. They're also typically much smaller and lighter. So I look at like a camera like this. I love this camera when I'm doing pro level work, and I'll tell you why. So I'd say in the end, because it feels really good in my hand. It's heavy as heck, but when I'm working and I'm thinking, I don't even feel the weight at all. And I really, really love the fact that it's weathered sealed, so I'm not going to worry about it getting destroyed in the rain. It has all the controls that I could ever want. So easy to access. I could just press buttons and do stuff. I don't have to think about it. So I can work. It works great. But if I take this camera, even on a mile walk, I'm dreading it because my mind is now on the walk, not on the job. And this thing feels like a boat anchor. You get a camera like this, or just even a standard, like maybe a D90 or whatever the Nikon version is now, 7500, 7600, whatever it is. They are so much lighter, so much easier on just carrying them. You don't really feel them compared to a behemoth like a big size camera. And unfortunately, when you have a camera like this, when you say, well, this is a nice small camera, well, the glass still has to be huge if you're going to use a telephoto on here. And this is almost worse to me. It's almost like it's imbalanced because you've got this light back end and this really heavy front end where you can buy lenses that are designed for these cameras that are just simply smaller and lighter. Now you might say to yourself, well, yes, but someday I'm going to want to advance to a full frame camera. You may or you may not, right? I mean, the technology is changing so fast you might never need to do that. But if you did, you could sell this guy, right, with its lenses, or you could keep it for your bee camera or your vacation camera because you don't want to haul around that giant camera. Or you could, if you really want to, you can buy the $2,000 lenses and use them on this camera with hopes of the future. So I think these APS-C cameras, like all larger sensor cameras, including micro four thirds cameras, take absolutely stunning images where you can get great resolution, great colors, just wonderful bokeh, anything that you would want in a professional way you can get with one of these cameras at a smaller size, a smaller price, and even more importantly, smaller cost when it comes to lenses. which can be a huge, huge, huge problem. Now, we want those low light lenses, but for most of us, we want those for portraiture, right? We want those, and you just need like maybe a nifty 50. That's going to do it for you. Or you want to spend a little bit more, get an 85 millimeter lens that at 2.8 or whatever. That's going to do it for you. If you are in super needs, like you're doing sports photography in a cave or something, yes, you're going to need the best of everything possible. But for your kid's soccer game, or for your kids, I know my son was very much into ultimate frisbee. All these cameras, including even lesser cameras, did a great job on capturing those moments. So this is the case for APS-C. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but I'm saying do not discount the APS-C camera. I think you will be astounded with the incredible quality of the images that it can produce. I probably will do another video on Micro Four Thirds, so I think it's kind of a similar spiel. So maybe I will, maybe I won't. But anyway, if you get some time, I do have a podcast. Haven't done much with it lately, but it's called Psychiatric Secrets Revealed. A lot of topics, though, that you might find interesting. Really hundreds of podcasts, and you can find it on iTunes. I also do a blog that I do every week, The Personal Side of Dr. Mike. Learn all my little dark secrets. That's drmikekuna.com, drmikekuna.com. We'll get you there, and you can find out all about me like you really want to. Beyond that, I'd say have an absolutely wonderful day. This is late October, and it snowed today in Illinois. We have snow out there. I'm feeling sorry for the trick-or-treaters. Tomorrow's going to be Halloween, and they're going to be wearing those heavy coats, and you won't even see their costumes, but there's always next year. Bye, everyone.